The Malthari cruiser Eclipse of Dawn cut through the void like a blade of living crystal, its bioluminescent hull pulsing with the steady rhythm of deep space travel. Commander Malvar stood at the observation deck, his six-fingered hands clasped behind his back, watching the distant blue-green speck of the human colony world grow larger in the viewport. The planet was designated Terra Nova-7, one of the outermost settlements of a species the Malthari had dismissed as primitive, chaotic, and ultimately inconsequential. Thelalan, the ship's chief sinologist, approached with the measured grace of his kind, his silver-veined robes shimmering in the ambient aurora light of the ship's interior. "Scans confirm minimal orbital defenses," he said, his voice a harmonic whisper, layered with the subtle vibrations of Malthari speech. "Their technology is crude, thermal propulsion, simple kinetic barriers. Nothing that can withstand our iron lances." Malvar exhaled through his gill slits, a slow, deliberate motion. The Malthari dominion had absorbed countless species into its fold, each bending to the inevitability of superior technology, superior intellect. The humans would be no different. Their history was a tapestry of war and self-destruction, their expansion into the stars marked by reckless ambition, rather than true mastery. "Order the fleet to assume blockade formation," Malvar commanded. "Let them see our strength before we demand their surrender." The Eclipse of Dawn and its sister ships shifted into position, their flowing organic hulls refracting starlight into cascades of violet and silver. To human eyes, they would appear as gods descending from the heavens, unstoppable, untouchable. But as the Malthari ships drew closer, something unexpected flickered across the tactical displays. Thelalan's cranial tendrils stiffened in alarm. "Commander, their surface installations." Malvar turned, his slit-pupilled eyes narrowing. The human colony was not scrambling in panic, nor broadcasting pleas for mercy. Instead, their energy signatures were changing. Deep beneath the planet's surface, dormant reactors flared to life. And then the sky burned. The first railgun round struck the Eclipse of Dawn with the force of a dying star. The impact shuddered through the crystalline superstructure, sending hairline fractures spiderwebbing across the command deck's translucent walls. Alarms shrieked in harmonic dissonance, their tones clashing with the Malthari's natural resonance. Malvar staggered, his equilibrium disrupted. "What?" Thelalan's voice was raw with disbelief. "They've been hiding their capabilities. Those weren't thermal signatures, they were sigdecoys." Another impact. Another. The human colony's defenses were not crude, they were predatory, and now, for the first time in centuries, the Malthari knew fear. "Sectom-7. Ecos ofthpst." The Eclipse of Dawn reeled, its flowing organic hull groaning under the relentless assault. Malvar braced himself against the crystalline command console, his talons digging into the smooth, luminous surface. The air tasted of ionized metal and something acrid, of human weapon residue. His secondary eyelids flickered shut in instinctive defense against the glare of explosions blooming across the ship's energy diffusion lattice. The Malthari had come expecting submission. They had found war. Thelalan's bioluminescent markings pulsed erratically, his usually composed demeanor fractured. His slender fingers danced across holographic readouts, each flick summoning streams of data in aurora-lit glyphs. Their weapons, these kinetics, they shouldn't be possible at this scale. His voice was a whisper, yet it carried the weight of a species, realizing its fatal miscalculation. Malvar's mind raced. The humans had lured them. The colony's surface had been a masked crude, vulnerable, deliberately so. Beneath, buried in the planet's crust like a serpent coiled to strike, lay a network of geothermal, fed railgun silos, their barrels still glowing white, hot from successive launches. The Malthari's initial scans had dismissed them as industrial reactors. A forgivable error, had the humans not engineered it to be one. A third impact rocked the ship. The Eclipse's energy shields, designed to disperse plasma and particle beams, struggled against the sheer, brute force of the projectiles. Each strike sent cascading fractures through the organic alloy, the material's self, repair mechanisms overwhelmed. Malvar's thoughts spiraled. The Malthari Dominion had absorbed countless species into its fold. Some resisted, yes, but always with predictable desperation, always with weapons the Dominion had already catalogued and countered. The humans fought like they had invented war. Deep beneath the colony's surface, Colonel Sarah Sullivan watched the tactical feed with grim satisfaction. The Malthari ship's elegant, wind-swept silhouette flickered on the screen, its once pristine hull now marred by blackened impact craters. Around her, the reinforced bunker hummed with activity, engineers adjusting power flows, soldiers monitoring secondary defenses, all moving with the quiet precision of those who had trained for this moment for years. Torres, her youngest corporal, exhaled sharply. They're not retreating. Sullivan didn't glance away from the feed. No. They're reassessing. The Malthari had expected a soft target, a fledgling colony, barely clinging to the edge of habitable space. What they'd found instead was Fortress Solstice, a honeycomb of buried artillery, redundant shield grids, and enough tungsten stockpiled to turn their elegant warship into a sieve. A flicker of movement on the feed. The Malthari vessel's energy signatures shifted, its flowing purple, white plasma streams coalescing into a new configuration. Sia. They were adapting. Sullivan allowed herself a thin smile. So were the humans. Sessa on board the Eclipse. Malvar forced his breathing into the slow, measured rhythm of command. Thelalan's latest report hung between them like a death sentence. Their projectiles are stealthed after launch. No energy trail. No thermal bloom, just kinetic annihilation. The scientist's voice wavered. We cannot track them in time to evade. Malvar's crest, a crown of flexible, iridescent spines, flattened against his skull. The Dominion's tactics relied on elegance, on outmaneuvering foes through superior technology and grace. But the humans, they fought like storms. Unpredictable, relentless. Unstoppable. A memory surfaced, an archival record of Earth's pre-spaceflight history. Wars fought with chemical explosives, cities razed for inches of territory. A species that had clawed its way to dominance over a planet, teeming with predators, not by fang or claw, but by sheer, ruthless ingenuity. Thelalan hesitated. High Commander, their transmissions, they're not demands. There, Malvar already knew, the humans weren't begging for mercy. They were counting their kills. Word count 750 purposely deepens the Maltharis realization of human ingenuity, contrasts their elegant warfare with humanity's brutal pragmatism, and sets the stage for escalation. Malthari ship damaged, struggling to adapt, reveal of Fortress Solstice's hidden defenses, Sullivan's calm command vs. Malvar's unraveling certainty, flash of human history hinting at their resilience, ending hook humans tallying casualties, not surrendering SCTI on 3. The first trap. The Malthari flagship, Eclipse of Dawn, shuddered as another impact rocked its crystalline hull. High Commander Malvar gripped the command spire, his talons leaving hairline fractures in the aerogel surface. The damage reports scrolled across the holographic displays in streams of violet glyphs, each one a fresh insult. Impossible. The human station, Fortress Solstice, was supposed to be a relic. A crude orbital platform. Barely more than welded steel and primitive reactors. The Malthari had encountered 100 such outposts in their conquests, and all had fallen beneath the elegant precision of their iron lances. This one burned. Thelalan's voice cut through the hum of the bridge, his bioluminescent frills pulsing with alarm. Their armor. It's layered with degenerate matter composites. Our scans didn't detect it beneath the outer plating. Malvar's third eyelid flickered shut for a fraction of a second. A reflex, an instinctive flinch. Degenerate matter. The humans had compressed stellar core material into EV armor plating. It was wasteful, reckless. Brilliant outside, the void seethed with fire. The stations, defenses, had been a ruse. The visible railgun turrets, the missile silos, all of them decoys. The real weapons had been hidden beneath layers of radiation shielding, dormant until the Malthari fleet had committed to their attack vector. Now, they awoke, plasma streams, not the refined, controlled lances of Malthari design, but wild arcs of superheated fury lashed out from concealed ports. They didn't pierce, they've clung, eating through shields like acid through flesh. Malvar's mind raced. This wasn't warfare as the galaxy understood it. The Malthari fought with precision, with elegance, with the certainty of mathematical supremacy. The humans fought like as animals. A memory surfaced, an archival record from the first human transmissions intercepted centuries ago. A planet racked by nuclear fire, nations crumbling, and yet, the broadcasts never ceased. Not pleas for mercy. Not surrender, just numbers, coordinates, targets. Thelalin's voice trembled. High Commander, their comms, Malvar already knew. The humans weren't signaling for peace, they were counting. On the bridge of Fortress Solstice, Colonel Sarah Sullivan watched the tactical display with the calm of a surgeon mid-operation. The Malthari ships were beautiful, their flowing silver hulls rippling like liquid under the barrage. Too beautiful. A war wasn't art. Activate the caltrops, she said. Corporal Torres hesitated for only a second before inputting the command. Across the station's underbelly, panels slid open, ejecting canisters into the void. Unremarkable at first, just metal cylinders tumbling lazily in 0G. Then they detonated, not explosions, but implosions. As space itself twisted as micro-singularities flared to life, dragging debris, energy, and 3 Malthari corvettes into spiraling vortices of crushed physics. The remaining ships veered wildly, their elegant formations shattered. Thelalin's frills went dark. They weaponized gravitational collapse. Malvar said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the station, on the crude, blocky letters etched into its side, a human tradition, he now realized. A name of warning, Solstice. Or the longest day. The turning point? And the Malthari had just stepped into the light. The Malthari fleet recoiled like a wounded beast, their graceful formations fracturing into chaos. Thelalin's talons trembled over the holographic displays as the Solstice's gravitational caltrops warped space itself, swallowing 3 of their corvettes in silent, crushing vortices. The remaining ships scattered, their flowing silver hulls twisting in evasive spirals, no longer the serene dance of superior beings, but the jerking panic of prey, realizing they were not the hunters here. Malvar's frills pulsed a deep, bruised violet. His mind raced through tactical doctrines, centuries of Malthari dominance, and found nothing. No precedent, no strategy. Humans were supposed to be predictable, reckless, emotional, breakable. Yet here they stood, turning the void into a weaponized labyrinth. Thelalin's voice was a whisper, barely audible over the hum of the Dawnseeker's strained engines. Their station. It isn't just a fortress. It's a trap. Malvar didn't answer, his gaze locked onto the Solstice's blocky, angular silhouette, so crude compared to the Malthari's flowing organic architecture. But where their ships were designed for beauty, for harmony with the cosmic winds, the human station was built for endurance. Every slab of armor, every exposed conduit, every weapon emplacement spoke of a single truth. For we will not break. Inside the Solstice, Colonel Sarah Sullivan watched the Malthari retreat with cold satisfaction. The feed from external cameras painted her face in flickering violet as the alien ship's iron trails streaked like panicked comets. They're regrouping. Corporal Torres muttered, fingers dancing over tactical readouts. Not running. Just reassessing. Sarah nodded, she knew this dance. The moment predators realized their prey had fangs. Good, she said. Let them look closer. Torres shot her a glance. Mime. Sarah didn't smile. They think they're studying us. But every scan they run, every frequency they probe, they're just showing us how they see. A pause. Then Torres' lips twitched. So we're hacking their arrogance. Thelalin's scanners hissed as they swept the solstice, again, peeling back layer after layer of deception. At first, the readings made no sense. The station's power signatures fluctuated wildly, its heat emissions mismatched with its size, its energy output, impossible for a structure so small. Then the realization struck like a plasma bolt. There, jamming us, Thelilin breathed. Not just blocking scans, feeding us lias. Malvar's frills stiffened. Explain. Thelilin gestured to the hologram, where the solstice's outline shimmered like a mirage. Their entire station is wrapped in a sensor, ghost matrix. Half of what we're seeing isn't there. Or worse, it's hiding something else entirely. A cold weight settled in Malvar's chest. Humans weren't just stubborn. They were devious. And they had lured the Malthari into staring straight into the abyss, only to realize the abyss was staring back. On the Solstice's command deck, Sarah watched the alien fleet's hesitation like a chess master savoring an opponent's miscalculation. "No," she said softly. Torres input the command deep within the station's armored heart. Systems word to life, systems the Malthari scans hadn't detected, could detect. Not because they were hidden, but because the aliens had never thought to look for them. Humanity's oldest weapon wasn't gravity or plasma or steel. It was misdirection, and the Malthari were about to learn that lesson in fire. The Malthari command vessel, Eclipse of Dawn, hung in the void like a frozen shard of amethyst, its flowing organic hull pulsing with faint auroras of ionized energy. Malvar's claws flexed against the command console, the crystalline surface humming beneath his touch. The human station, Ersa Solstice, was a jagged silhouette against the starfield, its edges blurred by the sensor, ghost matrix Thelilin had identified. It was a trap. Malvar knew it in his bones. Every instinct honed across 3 centuries of conquest screamed at him to withdraw, to regroup. But the High Synod had demanded proof of human eradication. Retreat was not an option. Then the void spoke. A transmission burst across all frequencies, raw and unfiltered, no encryption, no modulation. Female, Colonel Sarah Sullivan's words cut through the silence of the bridge like a blade. Malthari fleet, this is your only warning. Thelilin's frills flared in alarm. They're broadcasting on Azar's secure channels. How is that possible? Malvar didn't answer. His gaze locked onto the holographic projection as the Solstice's outer hull began to peel apart. Not in destruction, in transformation. Armored plates slid back like the petals of some monstrous flower, revealing not weapons, but arrays. Towers of blackened metal, humming with a deep, subsonic resonance that made the Eclipse's organic hull vibrate in sympathetic dissonance. Energy spikes. Thelilin's voice was a hiss. But the signatures, they don't match any known weapon system. Malvar's blood ran cold. The humans hadn't hidden missiles or plasma batteries. They had built something else entirely. On the Solstice, Torres watched the alien fleet's reaction through the flickering tactical feed. The Malthari ships were shifting formation, their elegant, wind-carved hulls reorienting in confusion. Sarah's fingers tightened around the edge of the command console. Activate the array. Torres input the final sequence. Deep within the station, centuries-old technology, rediscovered, repurposed, awoke. The arrays weren't weapons, not in the traditional sense. They were broadcast towers. And they were about to flood the void with the one thing the Malthari had never accounted for. The first pulse hit the Eclipse, like a physical blow. Malvar staggered as the ship's systems screamed. Bioluminescent panels flared crimson, crystalline interfaces fracturing under the strain. Thelilin shrieked, his frills clamping shut as raw data, for human data, flooded their networks. Not a virus, not a hack, a deafening, discordant roar of sound, distorted strings, pounding percussion, screaming vocals that clawed at the mind. It wasn't just auditory, it was visceral, vibrating through the Malthari's very bones, their delicate nervous systems overloaded by the sheer violence of the noise. "Shut it down!" Malvar roared. But the command was lost in the storm. The humans hadn't targeted their shields or engines. They had targeted their Ev's minds. Thelalan writhed, his frills spasming. Their Ev war hymns. Malvar's vision swam as the cacophony intensified. This wasn't just sound, it was history. Screams of ancient battles, the thunder of artillery, the howl of engines pushed past breaking points. The humans had weaponized their own culture, their defiance given form in a symphony of chaos. The abrupt cessation was worse than the noise. Malvar's ears rang in the void left behind. The holographic feed flickered, resolving into a single image. Conal Sullivan, her gaze unflinching. "You thought we were prey," she said. "But we are the ones who hunted Var gods." The transmission cut. The solstice's arrays flared one final time, not with sound but with light. A single, searing beam lanced out, not at the Malthari fleet, but at the dead moon orbiting nearby. The impact was instantaneous. The moon's surface shattered, fissures of molten rock splitting its face as the beam bored deeper, until the entire celestial body detonated in a firestorm of debris. Malvar's breath caught. The humans hadn't just warned them. They had demonstrated. And for the first time in his long, merciless life, Malvar felt something alien stir in his chest. The debris field from the shattered moon still glowed in the void, molten fragments cooling into jagged silhouettes against the starscape. Malvar's command spire hummed with the residual ionization of the solstice's weapon discharge. The air thick with the acrid tang of overloaded atmospheric scrubbers. His secondary hearts beat in staggered rhythm, a biological echo of the dread coiling through him. Thelalan's crystalline fingers danced across the holographic displays, her normally fluid movements stiff with tension. The data streams flickered purple, white energy signatures colliding with the crude, brutal efficiency of human weaponry. She had spent cycles studying lesser species, their predictable patterns, their limitations. But this was impossible. The humans had not merely survived their own cataclysms. They had weaponized them. Malvar's gaze locked onto the tactical feed. The solstice hung motionless now, its scarred hull a testament to the Malthari fleet's earlier assault. Yet it was not retreating, not surrendering. It was waiting. A low chime sounded, a priority transmission from the planetary surface. Malvar hesitated. The humans had already demonstrated their capacity for annihilation. What more could they? Thelalan's voice cut through his thoughts. "Sss, High Commander." The terrestrial scans. "Sss." The hologram resolved into a nightmare. Beneath the ruins of the human cities, deep within the planet's crust, something stirred. Vast, dormant structures, buried for centuries, flickered to life. Thermal signatures spiked, tectonic stabilizers, long assumed to be primitive seismic dampeners, disengaged in cascading sequence. The planet itself was awakening. Malvar's mandibles tightened. The humans had not just fortified their world. They had transformed it. A second transmission pierced the silence, Colonel Sullivan's voice, stripped of all artifice. "You wanted a war," she said. "Welcome to ours." The ground split. From the fractures rose monolithic constructs, towers of blackened alloy. Their surfaces etched with the scars of forgotten battles. Atmospheric condensers, repurposed, mining rigs, reforged, the very infrastructure of human civilization twisted into something monstrous. And then the sky burned. Thelalan's sensors screamed as the planet's defensive grid activated, not the elegant, flowing energy of Malthari technology, but a crude, devastating lattice of kinetic accelerators and plasma emitters. The first volley tore through the orbital blockade, shredding 3 cruisers before their shields could recalibrate. Malvar's claws dug into the command console. This was not strategy, not tactics. This was survival. The humans had not built their weapons to conquer. They had built them to endure. And now, for the first time in 1,000 cycles, The Malthari Empire faced an enemy that refused to die. Thelalin's voice was barely audible over the chaos. "They do not fight like warriors," she whispered. They fight like cornered beasts." Malvar said nothing. The planet below them roared to life, and in its fury, he finally understood. Humanity had not been hiding, they had been waiting. The Earth struck back. The Malthari fleet recoiled as the human defenses lashed out, their formations buckling under the sheer, unrelenting ferocity of the counterattack. Malvar's command cruiser shuddered as a kinetic round, a monstrous slug of tungsten accelerated to a fraction of light speed, grazed its flank, carving a molten scar through the vessel's flowing silver armor. The impact sent tremors through the deck, and for the first time in his long military career, Malvar felt something alien crawl through his veins. Not of death, Malthari warriors embraced the void with grace, but of understanding. The humans had not built their weapons for glory, nor for conquest. They had built them to survive, and survival, he realized with dawning horror, was the most ruthless motivator of all. Across the bridge, Thelalin's bioluminescent markings flickered erratically, her slender fingers dancing over the holographic displays as she parsed the battlefield. The data streams were chaos. Human ships moved in erratic, unpredictable patterns, their maneuvers too reckless for any civilized fleet. Yet somehow, they worked. "High Commander," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the klaxons. "Their formations, they are not formations at all. They are of individuals, acting in concert but not in unison. Like a swarm." Malvar's crest stiffened. The Malthari fought as one mind, one will. But the humans, they fought like Azer's animals. And then the trap was sprung, a cluster of human corvettes, small, nimble things, barely more than gun platforms, streaked toward the Malthari flank, their engines flaring like dying stars. Malvar's tactical officer hissed in disdain. "A distraction. They mean to draw our fire while their heavier vessels regroup." Malvar almost agreed, until the corvettes split apart, not into debris, into components. Thelalin's breath caught as the ships disassembled mid-flight, their hulls peeling away to reveal sleek, dagger-like drones, each one radiating a searing thermal signature. They swarmed the Malthari escorts, not with disciplined volleys, but with a frenzy of close-range strikes, plasma cutters burning through shield emitters, boarding tethers latching onto hulls. And then, the screams began. Not from the ships, from inside them. Malvar's blood ran cold as the first distress signal crackled over the comms. "They're us in the corridors. Are gods? They're not soldiers. They're..." The transmission cut to static. Thelalin's voice was hollow. "They sent drones. To board us." "Not drones. Troopers." Human combat frames, sleek, armored exoskeletons housing a single, relentless operator, ripped through bulkheads with hydraulic claws. Their movements too fast, too fluid for Malthari reflexes to track. They fought without hesitation, without mercy, their tactics honed not in war games, but in the crucible of extinction events. And leading them, a single figure, her armor scarred and pitted from 100 battles, her visor glowing a baleful crimson. Colonel Sarah Sullivan. She moved like a storm given flesh, her railgun barking in short, controlled bursts, each shot punching through Malthari warriors with terrifying precision. She did not waste motion, did not waste his breath. She simply killed. Malvar watched, transfixed, as she tore through his finest warriors, not with the elegance of a duelist, but with the brutal efficiency of a predator. And then, as suddenly as they had struck, the humans' vanished. The surviving troopers detonated their boarding tethers, hurling themselves back into the void, their frames wreathed in the burning remnants of Malthari hulls. The corvettes, what remained of them, regrouped, their shattered forms still somehow functional, still somehow fighting. Thelalin's voice was a whisper. They were never the main attack. Malvar understood. The corvettes had been the bait, the troopers, the blade, and now, As the human fleet surged forward, their true strength revealed at last, Malvar realized the depth of his error. The Malthari had come to conquer a people who had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of not dying. And now, for the first time in their long and storied history, they faced an enemy that eras refused to lose. The void between stars had never felt so cold. Malvar stood motionless on the command days of eclipsed dawn, his talons flexing against the smooth, crystalline surface of the tactical display. The holographic projections shimmered in the dim violet light, painting the devastation in stark relief. His fleet, once an unstoppable tide of Malthari might, was now a fractured constellation of burning wrecks and crippled warships. The human corvettes had not merely survived the initial engagement. They had thrived in it. And now, the true hammer was falling. Thelalin's voice was barely audible over the hum of the ship's failing systems. Their fleet's signature, it's not a retreat. It's a repositioning. Malvar did not need the scientist's analysis to see it. The human warships, those sleek, angular monstrosities of blackened steel and scorched armor, were not fleeing. They were circling, like wolves in the dark. They had drawn the Malthari into the kill zone, and now they tightened the noose. The first salvo came without warning. A storm of railgun fire erupted from the human battle line, hypervelocity slugs tearing through the void with terrifying precision. The Malthari shields flared, their elegant purple, white energy fields buckling under the sheer kinetic force. One frigate, the Veil of Dawn, disintegrated instantly, its crystalline hull shattering like glass beneath the impact. Malvar's blood ran cold. This was not the crude, wasteful warfare the Malthari had expected. This was mathematical. Every shot, every maneuver, every sacrifice, calculated to maximize destruction. The humans did not fight for honor. They fought to the win. Thelalin's fingers danced across the console, his bioluminescent markings pulsing with frantic energy. They're targeting algorithms. They're adapting faster than our countermeasures! Malvar clenched his jaw. Of course they were. The humans had spent millennia refining the art of killing. Their entire history was a chronicle of war, written in blood and fire. They had clawed their way to dominance on their homeworld, not through elegance, but through sheer, relentless adaptation. And now, they had turned that same brutal ingenuity upon the stars. A new horror unfolded before him. The human troopers, those armored nightmares, had not merely boarded his ships. They had infested them. Sensor feeds flickered with glimpses of their movements, corridors breached, command nodes overrun, Malthari warriors cut down with terrifying efficiency. One feed showed a lone human, Corporal Cameron Torres, his nameplate read, standing amidst a pile of Malthari corpses, his armor scorched and battered, his rifle still smoking. He did not gloat, he did not pause. He simply moved forward, relentless as the tide. Malvar's crest flattened in instinctive dread. This was not a battle. This was extermination. A new signal flared on the edge of the tactical display. Thelalin's breath caught. Another fleet. Malvar's talons dug deeper into the console. No, not another fleet. Reinforcements. A human reinforcements. Fresh warships, fresh troops, fresh hunger for the fight. Thelalin's voice was hollow. They knew, we would commit everything to destroy the corvettes. Malvar closed his eyes. The humans had not just outmaneuvered him. They had thought him. And now, as the full weight of their strategy crashed down upon him, Malvar understood the terrible truth. The Malthari had come to conquer, the humans had come to end them. SCTIO-9Z, teach Storm BH. The Malthari command spire trembled as another distant detonation rocked the orbital grid. Malvar's talons flexed against the crystalline interface, watching the tactical display fracture under the weight of human persistence. The reinforcements weren't just ships. They were Air's momentum, a cascading wave of steel and fire that crashed against the Malthari lines with the inevitability of a collapsing star. Thelalin's bioluminescent markings flickered erratically, his voice barely audible over the shuddering hum of failing systems. Their fleet composition, it makes no sense. Half their vessels are barely spaceworthy. Malvar didn't need the scans to confirm it. He could see it, the patchwork armor plating, the jury, rigged thrusters, the ships that should have been decommissioned decades ago. Yet they came anyway, engines burning at critical overload. Their crews undaunted by the certainty of their own destruction. A new horror settled in his chest. The humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to outlast. On the surface, Colonel Sarah Sullivan moved through the ruins of the Malthari forward base like a storm given form. Her boots crunched over shattered crystalline alloy, her rifle sweeping across the scorched remains of what had once been an impenetrable stronghold. The air reeked of ionized plasma and something acrid, Malthari blood. She realized it scent metallic and wrong. Corporal Torres fell into step beside her, his visor cracked, his breath ragged. They're pulling back. Sullivan didn't answer. She didn't need to. The Malthari were retreating, yes, but not in the orderly, tactical withdrawal of a disciplined force. This was rout. Their formations had dissolved into chaos, their commanders too slow to adapt to the sheer ferocity of human counterstrikes. A flicker of movement in the ruins. Torres' rifle snapped up, but Sullivan's hand stopped him. A single Malthari soldier crouched in the wreckage, its carapace cracked, its limbs trembling. It stared at them with wide, luminous eyes, its crest flattened in submission. Torres exhaled. Prisoner. Sullivan studied the alien for a long moment. Then she shook her head. Leave it. They moved on. Behind them, the Malthari soldier did not rise. Malvar's command spire shuddered again, the organic metal groaning under the strain of repeated impacts. Thelalin's voice was a whisper. They're targeting the atmospheric condensers. Of course they were. The humans had studied them, learned their weaknesses. And now they were dismantling the Malthari war machine piece by piece. Malvar's gaze drifted to the viewport, where the human fleet swarmed like locusts, their weapons flaring in the void. He had thought them primitive, unworthy. Now he understood. Humanity had not survived their own violent history by chance. They had survived because they were better at it than anything else in the cosmos. And the Malthari had just made themselves the next enemy on their list. Thelalin's voice was hollow. What do we do? Malvar closed his eyes. There was only one answer left. Prepare the retreat. The words tasted like ash. But the storm was here, and the Malthari had no shelter left. The command spire's bioluminescent panels flickered like dying stars, their aurora hues dimming beneath the relentless assault. Malvar's talons dug into the organic metal of his command console, the material yielding like flesh beneath his grip. The air tasted of ionized plasma and something acrid burnt circuitry, perhaps, or the ozone tang of failing atmospheric regulators. Thelalin's hands moved in frantic arcs across the holographic displays, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the emergency flares of the ship's failing systems. The primary condensers are gone, he murmured, voice stripped of its usual melodic resonance. Secondary systems at 23% efficiency. The humans, Malvar didn't need the report. He could see it in the way the human vessels moved. They weren't just attacking, they were hunting. The human fleet, once dismissed as a scattered, primitive armada, now moved with terrifying synchronicity. Their ships wove through the Malthari formation like wolves through tall grass, their railgun salvos punching through crystalline armor with surgical precision. Each impact sent tremors through the spire, the vibrations humming through Malvar's bones like a dirge. And then there were the boarding pods. Malvar had seen the scans, knew what they carried. Human soldiers, not the frail, soft-skinned creatures the Malthari had expected, but something else entirely. Clad in powered armor blackened by void exposure, their visors glowing like predators' eyes in the dark. They moved in packs, Their tactics honed by centuries of terrestrial warfare, flanking, ambushing, adapting. The last security feed from Deck 7 still played in Malvar's mind. A Malthari defender, raised from birth to wield plasma lances with lethal grace, had managed to corner one of the humans in a maintenance corridor. The human hadn't even raised its weapon. It had smiled. Then it lunged. Malvar had watched, frozen, as the human Corporal Cameron Torres, according to the intercepted transmissions, grabbed the Malthari's weapon arm, and wrist twisted. The sickening snap of chitinous plating had been drowned out by the human's laughter, bright and terrible. Now, the spire's comms array crackled to life, a burst of human language filtering through the static. Thelalan flinched as the translation protocols rendered it into something comprehensible. Malthari Command Vessel, this is Colonel Sarah Sullivan of the Terran Defense Fleet. You've lost, stand down. The words were flat, unadorned, a statement of fact, not a plea. Malvar's crest spines flattened against his skull. He had commanded fleets across 100 star systems, brought empires to their knees beneath the might of Malthari technology. He had never once considered surrender. This was different. The humans didn't fight like the others. They didn't stop. Thelalan's voice was barely audible over the groaning of the spire's superstructure. The retreat signal has been broadcast. The surviving vessels are disengaging. Malvar didn't respond. His gaze was fixed on the main viewport, where the human flagship, far indomitable, its hull scarred but unbroken, loomed like a specter. Its railgun batteries hummed with charged energy. The barrels trained unerringly on the spire's heart. One shot, that was all it would take. And the humans that knew it, Thelalan exhaled, his bioluminescent markings pulsing erratically. They could have destroyed us by now. Malvar closed his eyes. That was the most terrifying realization of all. The humans weren't just winning, they were letting the Malthari retreat. A message, a warning. We could have killed you all. Next time, we might not be so merciful. The last transmission hissed through the spire's failing systems, Sullivan's voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Remember this day. Malvar would. Oh, he would. The silence inside the Malthari command spire was thick, suffocating, like the air before a storm. Malvar stood motionless, his talons curled against the crystalline console. The faint hum of failing systems, the only sound. The holographic displays flickered, casting jagged violet shadows across his face. They had lost, not just the battle, the idea of the battle. The certainty that had driven the Malthari for generations. The unshakable belief that their empire was invincible, that no species could stand against their flowing silver fleets and ionized lances. And yet, the humans had. Thelalan's voice was barely a whisper, his bioluminescence dimmed in defeat. Their flagship hasn't fired. Malvar didn't need to look at the viewport to know it was true. The as indomitable hung in the void, its railgun batteries still charged, still aimed, but silent. Waiting, that was the worst of it. The humans could have annihilated them, reduced the spire to molten slag, turned the retreating Malthari fleet into drifting wreckage. But they hadn't. The question coiled in Malvar's mind like a serpent. Was it mercy? Some twisted form of honor? Or, his breath caught. The humans weren't just warriors. They were teachers, and this was their message. Carved into the bones of the Malthari fleet, you are not invincible. We could have killed you, we chose not to. Thelalan's tendrils twitched, his voice hollow. They're letting us go. Malvar exhaled, long and slow. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. Because now, the Malthari would have to decide what came next. Would they retreat, licking their wounds, pretending this defeat had never happened? Or would they have learned? The choice settled over him like a weight. Beyond the viewport, the Indomitable's engines flared, not in attack, but in departure. The humans were leaving, their message delivered. Malvar watched until the last glimmer of their thrusters faded into the dark. Then, slowly, he turned to Thelalan. Gather the surviving commanders, he said, his voice rough. We have much to discuss. The war was over. But something far more dangerous had begun. The wreckage of the Malthari fleet drifted like shattered crystal in the void. Their once gleaming organic hulls, now fractured and dark. Their aurora, colored energy flows flickering like dying embers. The Ars Indomitable was gone, its silhouette swallowed by the infinite black, leaving behind only the echo of its message, one carved not in words, but in the brutal, undeniable language of survival. Malvar stood motionless on the command deck, his talons resting against the smooth, wind-carved surface of the tactical display. The data still pulsed there, ship losses, casualty reports, energy depletion levels, but the numbers no longer mattered. What mattered was the weight of them. The weight of failure, the weight of realization. The humans had not just defeated them. They had humiliated them. And worse, they had done so without firing a single lethal shot. Thelalan approached, his bioluminescent markings dimmed in a display of submissive distress. His tendrils coiled tight against his torso, the Malthari equivalent of a clenched fist. The surviving commanders are assembled, he murmured. They await your word. Malvar exhaled, the sound like wind through fractured stone. He had expected rage from his officers, demands for vengeance. Instead, there was only silence. A silence thick with something unfamiliar, because they had all seen it. The way the human ship had moved, not with the elegant, flowing precision of Malthari technology, but with the brutal, relentless efficiency of a predator that had spent millennia perfecting the art of killing. The way their weapons had chosen their targets, disabling without destroying. The way their boarding drones had sliced through their defenses like they were nothing. And then, the way they had simply stopped. If not because they have had to, because they chose to. Malvar turned from the display, his talons leaving faint grooves in the aerogel surface. Tell me, Thelalan, he said, his voice low. What did our scans reveal of their history? The scientist hesitated. Chaos, he admitted. Earnless war. They have spent their entire existence fighting, not just external threats, but each other. Their planet is littered with the ruins of civilizations they burned down themselves. Malvar's crest flattened. And yet they stand united now. Thelalan's tendrils twitched. Yes. A cold understanding settled over Malvar. The humans had not achieved this strength through peace. They had forged it in fire, in blood, in the relentless crucible of conflict, and now they had turned that same ferocity outward, not in mindless destruction, but in control. They had allowed the Malthari to live, and that was the most devastating blow of all. Malvar stepped into the war chamber, where the surviving commanders stood in a loose semicircle, their postures tense, their bioluminescence muted. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he let the silence stretch, let them feel the enormity of what had happened. Finally, he lifted his head. We underestimated them, he said, the words heavy. We saw their chaos and called it weakness. We saw their violence and called it savagery. But we were wrong. A ripple passed through the gathered Malthari. The humans are not reckless, Malvar continued. They are ruthless. They do not fight because they are ignorant. They fight because they have learned through millennia of suffering that survival is not given. It is taken. He paused, letting the truth settle. And now, they have shown us mercy. The word hung in the air like a blade. Not because they feared the Malthari, but because they did not. One of the younger commanders, her crest flaring in agitation, stepped forward. What do we do? She demanded. Do we retreat, regroup, strike back? Malvar looked at her, then beyond her to the stars where the Indomitable had vanished. No, he said softly. We learn. The chamber fell utterly still. Malvar straightened, his bioluminescence pulsing with slow, deliberate light. The humans have given us a gift. Not just our lives, but understanding. They have shown us what true strength looks like. And if we are wise, we will heed the lesson. He turned to Thelalan. Open a channel to the High Conclave. Tell them the war is over. Thelalan's tendrils trembled. And if they refuse? Malvar's voice did not waver. Then they will learn the same way we did. Beyond the viewport, the remnants of the Malthari fleet drifted, their wounds still fresh, their pride still bleeding. But something new stirred in the silence. Not defeat, and perhaps, in time, the humans had left, but their shadow would linger forever.